Hey guys, welcome back on to my YouTube channel. And today, guys, we will be reading chapter 9 of Pet Trouble Mud Puddle Poodle. And today we will be reading it by T.T. Sutherland. And I hope you're enjoying these books series so far. And guys, I hope you enjoy. Bye. I'm just kidding. Okay, chapter 9. Peepa. I don't know what kind of words that name that is, guys, but it's no offense, but it sounds weird. So yeah. Peepa and Michelle didn't say anything about the dress when they came back downstairs. Michelle didn't even ask any questions. I think they weren't sure if I even asked any questions. I think they weren't sure if I was in trouble or not. We finished our snacks and then Mom said we could practice teaching Buttons to come when she was called. Miguel and his friends were in his room doing homework, which I think really means talking about girls, but I think at least they weren't in the living room anymore. So each of the three of us and Mom took a bunch of dog treats and set it on the floor in a big square. I held Buttons on my lap while we got settled. She licked my head and wagging her tail, so I guessed of course she wasn't too mad at me anymore. Of course, I wasn't exactly sure that I wasn't still mad at her. Mom called her first. Buttons, come here, she said, holding out her hands. Buttons, come. Buttons sat down on my foot and panted, looking up at me. Go on, I said, pointing at Mom. Mom pulled a treat out of her pocket. Buttons, she called. But before she even finished saying it, Buttons galloped across the carpet to her and leaped at the treat. Yes! Good girl! Good Buttons! Mom said happily, patting her while Buttons ate the treat. Now you, Pippa. Buttons! Pippa, Pippa, called. Buttons' ears went up and she tilted her head at Pippa. Buttons! Pippa called again. Buttons took a tentative step toward her. Then Pippa held up the treat and Buttons sprang into her action. She ran so fast she tipped over her paws and did a kind of somersault into Pippa's lap. Aw, good girl, Buttons, Pippa said, patting her. Michelle had to hold up the treat to get Buttons to come over to her. But when I called her, Buttons ran right away to me without waiting to see if I had a treat. She bounced around my feet with all to her fur going spring, spring. Good girl, good Buttons, I said, letting her have the treat. We did that for 10 minutes until Buttons would come to us, each of us, no matter who called her in what order. We started giving her treats only every other time, and she still came. And she still looked really delighted when we told her how good she was. Aren't you a clever, clever girl? Mom said to Buttons, rubbing her tummy as Buttons rolled on the floor. Huh? Carlos snorted from the doorway. I didn't know how long he'd been watching us. Sure, he said. You'll go to you as now that she knows you. Have treats. That doesn't mean she knows her name. You call her then. Mom said, try it, but sound excited. I said, act happy to see her. Carlos rolled her eyes. Buttons, he said in this bored voice. Hey, Buttons. The puppy sat up and looked at him. Her ears twitched. Carlos looked surprised. Buttons, come, he said, with a little more enthusiasm. He reached out a hand toward her. Buttons scrambled to her paws and charged across the carpet to him. She pounced on his hand, wrapped her front paws around it, and started trying to lick it in submission. Wow, Carlos said. That actually worked. Of course it did, Mom said proudly. Buttons, sit, Carlos said. He held his hand above Buttons' nose. She tried to jump up and touch it, but he lifted it out of reach, and then down again, holding it right over her nose and moving it back slowly to her behind. When down it touched the floor, Buttons was sitting. How did you do that? Michelle gasped. That was so cool, Pippa said. Good, sit, Buttons, Carlos said. Mom tossed him a treat and gave it to Buttons. She chewed on it with a cocky expression. Bring it, mister. I'm a genius. Huh? Said Carlos. I saw it on the TV show, but I didn't think it would work. I told you poodles are smart, I said. Okay. Mom checked her watch. We should let her out again, she said. But it's raining, I said. She'll get all wet. She has to get used to it, Mom said, shaking her head. We don't want her to think she can pee inside whenever it's raining. All right, I said with a huge sigh. Come on, Buttons. Buttons trotted to the sliding doors with me and pawed at the grass. Rain was splattering down through the wet trees. I could see that the grass was soaking wet. Okay, but come right back, I said to her. She gazed up at me with her tongue hanging out. I opened the door and she scrambled out. I closed the door again and peering at her through the glass. At first, Buttons seemed surprised by the water coming from the sky. She shook her head, and then coming from the sky, she shook her head, and then shook it again, and then spun in a circle like she thought maybe her tail was going to blame. I couldn't hear her, but I knew she was gurring and yipping. Her fur was already getting plastered to her little body. I pulled the door open a little ways. Hurry up, Buttons, I yelled. She stopped spinning in a circle and looked over at me. I shut the door again so I wouldn't get wet. Buttons blinked and stared, padding across the lawn. Her paws went sploosh, sploosh into wet grass. She stopped and did her business, and then kept going. She sped up again as she headed for the flower bushes. Suddenly I saw what she was aiming for. Buttons, no! I shouted. Buttons, no! I shouted. Buttons, no! I shouted, throwing the doors open again, but Buttons ignored me. She dove headfirst into an enormous mud puddle at the edge of the lawn. The mud went sploosh all over her. Thrilled, Buttons flipped in onto her back and started rolling with glee. Buttons, I yelled. Buttons, bad dog. Buttons, stop it. It seemed like Buttons couldn't even hear me through the rain, or else she had too much mud in her ears. Her paws flopped around as she wriggled deeper into the puddle. Man! I shouted, slamming the door shut. I ran out, got my raincoat and galoshes. Mom followed me to the door and saw that Buttons was doing. She hid her smile, but I saw it. Look how bad she's being, I said. I sat down on the floor to pull my boots on. She's just having fun, Mom said. She doesn't know it's bad. Like when you were little and you had no idea. Throwing peas at your brothers drove me crazy. Well, I said, but that's different. Peas are gross, and mud is gross. Why does she like it so much? It probably feels new and goopy and exciting, Mom said, like when you met Jello for the first time. I didn't remember that, but there were pictures of me in our family albums, with my face and hands in high chair covered in shiny grape-flavored speckles. All right, fine. So even I played with my food when I was little, but I got over it pretty fast. I pulled my hood of my raincoat up and ran out into the yard. Buttons didn't see me coming. She was having far too much fun, covering herself in mud. When I scooped her up, she didn't look anything like herself. She was muddy and dripping from tip to tail, and she had the most enormous grin on her face. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Why are you crazy?" Buttons draped her paws over my arm and snuggled into my chest. I could feel her heart beating through my fingertips. She was so little. Maybe Mom was right and she really didn't know what she was being bad. But how could I get her to stop? Pippa and Michelle thought Muddy Buttons was the funniest they'd ever seen. They'd stood around the sink and helped me while I gave her yet another bath. I left my raincoat on so my clothes underneath wouldn't get wet. Buttons didn't even try to jump out. She was too interested in exploring my friend's hands. To see if they were hiding any more treats. Finally, she was clean again. We wrapped her in a towel and took her into the living room, where she promptly fell asleep on the couch. Soon after that, Michelle's dad picked her up, and then Pippa's mom called to ask if Pippa could stay for dinner, since she was stuck at the office. So Pippa and I did our homework in the living room, next to sleeping Buttons. "You're so lucky," Pippa said out of a blue while I was working on a Spanish worksheet. I like those because they're easy for me. My grandparents on Mom's side only speak Spanish, so I've spoken it since I was little. Lucky? Why? I said. Lucky? Why? I said. I'm totally not. Have you met my brothers? It's like torture, living in this house. It seems like fun, Pippa said wistfully. It's always really quiet in my house. It sure wasn't quiet here. I'd been wondering whether Pippa could really concentrate on her homework with all the noise going on. I mean, I'm used to it, but for instance, right at that moment, Miguel was blasting his music upstairs. Dun 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 dun. Upstairs, Oliver was in the downstairs office, talking to Miriam on the telephone. Ooh la la. Carlos was watching TV in the den, and Mom was clattering around the kitchen. I'm pretty sure deaf people 3 blocks away could hear my house. And now you have a dog too, Pippa added. She patted Buttons and went sneeze in her sleep and rolled closer to Pippa's hand. I wish we could have a dog. What kind would you want? I asked. I don't know, Pippa said. One that gets along with Mr. Pudge. Maybe a poodle like yours. I grumbled. You should get a real poodle instead. Want to see pictures of what they're supposed to look when they're not all muddy and wet? Okay, Pippa followed me into the den, and I opened my file of photos on the family computer. Carlos turned up the volume on the TV and ignored us. He was watching something on the History Channel. Seriously? As if he could get any more boring. I clicked on a photo of a toy poodle at a dog show. She looked so perfect and neat and precise. Nothing like the snoozing ball of fluff in the other room. Isn't she precious? I said to Pippa. Yeah, that's what I thought Buttons would like, Pippa said. I mean, I thought all poodles looked like that. Me too, I said. Carlos glanced at us, flipped off the TV, and left the room. Fine with me. I always feel like I'm winning when I can't get my brothers to go away, especially since they just ignore me when they're in the same room as me anyway. Let's pick a dog for you, I said, clicking on the internet. There are so many cute little ones. I showed her Matalas and Yorkies and Shih Tzus, mixes of little dogs. They were really sweet too. Pippa giggled and went "Aw" at every photo. She liked the Papillions best because of their funny big butterfly ears and tiny faces. So we decided she would get one of those. After all, half of an hour, I left her at the computer and went to check on Buttons. And guess what I found? Carlos was playing with her. Chapter 10. Aha! I cried. You like that dog. You do. You love her. I do not, he said, jumping to his feet. His face was turning red. I just wanted to see what other tricks she could learn. Guys, I love this author because she's in the Dragon Prophecy books. She reads. It's so funny because she puts so much enthusiasm into the books that she writes or publishes, and it's so interesting to read them because why am I saying so much and I just said it again. And she adds up so much interesting things into the book that you want to read more of it and more of it each day. And yeah, let's keep continuing. Red, I just wanted to see what other tricks she could learn. Buttons was sitting politely on the couch next to him. She looked over her shoulder at me with this furious, "Excuse me, I'm very busy learning here," face. It is working, I asked. Carlos rubbed his head. Yeah, I guess, he mumbled. Like what? I said, show me. Carlos was acting all whatever, but I could tell he was actually kind of excited. Buttons, shake, he said, holding out his hands, and Buttons put out her paw in his hand. Oh my gosh, I yelped. She did it. Good shake, Carlos said, giving Buttons a treat. She stood up and gobbled it out of his hand. We're going to stay, he said to me. Buttons, sit. He did the same hand motion as before, and she sat down. Again on the couch cushion. Buttons, stay. He put back and another step. Buttons sat still, staring at him. I was practically holding my breath. He took another step back. Buttons was quivering with excitement. Good stay. Come here, Carlos said. Buttons flew off the couch and ran over to him. She jumped and leaped around his feet as he dropped treats in her mouth. So she is pretty smart, huh? I said. I guess she's pretty smart, Carlos admitted. I only have to show her about 6 or 7 times before she gets it. Show me how to teach her tricks, I demanded. I wanted to know everything. We should take her to class when she's a little older, Carlos said. When I thought we were going to get a border collie, I found these tricks and obedience and agility classes not too far away. Maybe Buttons wouldn't be too bad at them. She'd be amazing, I said. I bet she'd be top of her class. That'd be kind of cool, Carlos said. He smiled at Buttons. Yeah, he totally did. Guys, I think Carlos is changing a bit, because he wants to train the dog, and he got exposed by his own sister, which is very funny. And I hope you're enjoying this book so far. I'm enjoying it too. This is hilarious. He got exposed by his younger sister. That'd be kind of cool, Carlos said. He smiled at Buttons. Yeah, he totally did. I was proud of my little dog, but it made me a little grumpy too. Buttons was acting like exactly the dog Carlos had asked for. So why couldn't she be more like the dog I dreamed of? Just then, Mom called us into the kitchen to get our plates for dinner. Buttons came romping along with us, ruffing excitedly. I was about to tell Mom about her brilliant tricks, but then Buttons accidentally careened into her food dish, knocked all the cable into her water bowl, spilled all the water on the floor, and somehow managed to get wet cable crumbs all through the fluffy fur. So it didn't seem like the best idea. And it didn't seem like the best time to tell everyone how smart she was. Carlos told Danny a little bit about it at dinner. Though Danny went ha and said any dog can learn how to sit. Merlin can catch a tennis ball in his mouth in mid-air. Ooh, all hail the great and wondrous Merlin, I said. Pippa giggled. Carlos gave Buttons a thoughtful look, like he was thinking about how to train her to do that too. I thought it might be hard since her head was only about the size of a tennis ball itself. Yeah, well, a Rottweiler can tear off your hand with one bite, Miguel said with relish. With relish. If you guys tasted relish, it basically is like rotten cabbage, like salted vinegar, I think, cabbage. It's good on hot dogs. I tried it once and it's actually good, so you should try it. Yeah, where am I? Pippa looked horrified, and so did Mom. I don't think it's true, Mom said. Okay, I made it up, Miguel said. But they look like they can. You're deranged, I said to him. Oliver didn't say anything. He was moping again. I guess his phone call with Miru had gone badly. After Pippa went home, I went back to the computer and looked at the photos of poodles again. Maybe I could feel better. Maybe I could feel better. Even if she, I went back to the computer and looked at the photos of poodles again. Maybe I could feel better once we could have Buttons and a proper poodle haircut. Even if she couldn't wear a dress, she could at least have cut little puffs of her around her ankles. Danny and Oliver came into the den to watch a baseball game, and Danny spotted the photo I had open. Oh man, he said, what are you plotting now? This is what a poodle should look like, I said. See how pretty and delicate she is? This will be Buttons as soon as she gets old enough for a haircut. That dog looks completely ridiculous, Danny said. Oliver made a face and nodded, which made me mad, and I was hoping Oliver would support me since he seemed to actually like Buttons. Buttons is going to look like a little princess, I said, even if I can't put ribbons on her. What are those? Danny demanded. He leaned over my shoulders and pointed at my round, fluffy rosettes on the top of the dog's hips. Are the butt I can't say it. Butt puffs. I love this book because the words are some of the words are all in caps, and I like to yell a lot. And I like to yell. Butt puffs? They are not butt puffs. I said they're rosettes. That is if a puff or fur on either side of the dog's butt. Danny said, "Those are butt puffs. You want our dog to have butt puffs." I love this book. I get to yell. I love yelling. I think they're pretty, I said. Oliver slapped his forehead and sat down on the couch, shaking his head. "Well, I don't care," Danny said, turning away. "It's not my dog anyway." "That's right," I thought. "She's my dog. Or she's supposed to be, even if she won't wear pink." Then I had an idea. Mom said no dresses, but maybe there was another way to make Buttons a little more pink and princessy. After school on Tuesday, I went up to my room. Pippa had her after-school art class on Tuesday, so she wasn't there with me. I took that class with her last year, but I only wanted to draw pretty dresses with neat pencils and markers, and the teacher made me do all these messy things with clay and paste and glue and watercolors, and I ruined my perfectly nice pink skirt that way, so I told Mom I didn't want to do it anymore. I cleaned my bottom dresser drawer and pulled out a big clear box. Inside, all my nail polishes arranged by color. This is too girly. By color: pale pinks in the top row, bright pinks in the top row, bright pinks in the middle, and reds at the bottom. I love painting my nails. I'm the only girl I know who can keep my nails polished with chipping for 4 whole days straight, except when bratty Isaac steals my ribbon, and I have to chase him all around the playground. That usually ruins my nail polish, which is another reason why it makes me so mad. I picked out 2 bright pinks and 2 pale pinks and took them downstairs to the living room. I had to decide whether to do all of Button's nails in the same color or different for each paw. If it was going to look so cute. I was real excited. Then my dog and I would have matching nails, and everyone would be able to tell that he was mine. Oliver was sitting on the couch letting Buttons chase his hand around in circles. She would play, growl, and pounce on it, and then he'd sneak it away and hide in under a cushion, and she'd go, dig, 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 with her little paws and trying to get it. When I came in, he had just flung a blue cotton blanket over her head. The blanket covered blob was yipping and leaping about like this was the most thrilling thing that had ever happened to her. Oliver spotted the nail polish in my hand before I even said anything. "Uh-oh," he said. "Don't you try to stop me," I said. wagging my finger at him. Buttons will love it. Buttons will hate it, Oliver said. Hate what? Carlos said, coming in from the yard. His eyes went straight to the nail polish in my hands. No, Rosie, no. She's my dog! I yelled. That is exactly why I love this book. I can yell, and I love yelling. Buttons popped her head from under the blanket. Her fur was all fluffed up around her face like she'd gone through a dryer. She yipped when she saw me and came to the edge of the couch, leaning toward me and wagging her tail. See, I said, she's excited. I sat down on the floor, but I remembered what Mom always makes me spread out an old towel under my hands when I paint my nails, which is silly because I'm the only person in this house who can actually manage not to spill something. But I follow the rules, so she'll keep me buying me new polish. So I got up and went to the linen closet to get a towel. But when I got back, my 4 bottles of nail polish had mysteriously vanished. Oliver, I said, did you take my nail polish? What nail polish? He innocently Buttons rolled over and over, rubbed her tummy. I couldn't tell from his face whether he was really the thief or not. Carlos, give it back, I said, putting my hands on my hips. Carlos lifted his hands in his air. I don't know what you mean, he said. I stamped my foot. Where is it? Give it back. I'm pretty sure this is a nail polish free zone, Oliver said. Carlos nodded. You're not going to stop me, I said. Pointing at them, I turned and ran upstairs. I had more nail polish. I was going to do this. Most importantly, I was going to do this before Mom got home from the boutique. I wasn't sure if she'd stop me, but I was sure that if she saw how cute it looked before she could stop me, she'd let me do it again. I pulled out a few more bottles of pink nail polish and ran downstairs. Now my towel was gone. Buttons sat on the couch blinking at me. What's all the running around for? Stop it! I shouted at Carlos and Oliver, stamping my foot. This time I took the nail polish with me when I went to the linen closet. When I got back to the living room, Miguel and Danny were there too. It's like some kind of smoke signal goes up when one brother is torturing me. Somehow all the others suddenly turned up to join in. Tell me you're not going to do this, Danny said, frowning at the nail polish. A Rottweiler would bite your hand off if you tried it, Miguel offered, making things up. Well, it's a good thing we have Buttons instead of a Rottweiler, I snapped. Wait, I was supposed to yell that. Well, it's a good thing we have Buttons instead of a Rottweiler, I snapped. I spread the towel on the floor in front of the couch and sat down on it. I set one of the nail polish bottles next to me. My brothers all hovered around staring. Buttons, come here, I said, patting the towel. Don't do it, Buttons, Jenny cried dramatically. But Buttons jumped down onto the towel and came over to sniff my hand. I patted her head. Good girl, I said. Now sit. Buttons tried to chew on my thumb. No, I said, pulling my hand back. I made my hand gesture I seen Carlos do. Sit, Buttons tilted her head at my hand and then sat. Man, I feel like my powers are being used for evil, said Carlos. Buttons, shake, I said, holding out my hand. Buttons lowered her head and licked my palm. Carlos snickered. So I just picked up Buttons' paw and sat there, and she let me hold it. Her tongue was hanging out, and she smiled at me. See, I knew she would be a good dog. Good girl, I said. I reached out for the nail polish with my free hand. With my free hand, it was gone. I felt around the towel looking for it, but it had vanished just like the others. Just like the others. Just like the others. I hadn't even noticed my brothers moving. One of them must have darted forward to grab it while I was looking at Buttons. You guys are so mean, I said. You're the one that's mean, Carlos said. Doing something to this poor Buttons. You don't understand because you're a boy, I said, trying to sound all superior, the way he usually does. Buttons is a girl like me, so she'll have pretty pink nails. I don't think that's how it works, Oliver said. I mean, she's a dog. Why would any dog want their nails painted? It's going to look silly, Rosie. No, it won't, I said. I didn't have to argue with them. I had another bottle of nail polish in my pocket. When I pulled it out, they all groaned. I ignored them. I showed it and then twisted off the cap carefully, scraping the brush against the side of the top so it wouldn't trip. Of course I had to let go of Button's paw to do that. Button sat for a moment, but once the nail polish was open, she tilted her head and stood up. She took a small step forward and sniffed at the bottom. Sneeze! She sneezed loudly with enough force to knock herself over on her butt. I grabbed for her paw, but she bounced up and backed away. Buttons, come here, I said, holding the brush in one hand and reached in for her paw with the other. Button took another step back, looking from the brush with a worried expression. Seriously, Rosie, explained Oliver. Oliver said, it's not like you. It's not like you need to make your more embarrassing, Miguel said. Shut up, I said fiercely. Buttons, come here. Buttons hesitated for another moment, then turned and fled the back of the couch. My brothers exploded into cheers. Woo! Danny shouted. Buttons does something right. She proves she's smart again. Carlos cried, applauding. Yeah, Miguel said. Run, Buttons. Run for your life. Shut up, I screamed. Shut up, I screamed. You guys are so mean. I jumped up and stormed out of the room. I think the nail polish brushed into the sink on the way upstairs. I didn't feel like going back to save the rest of my nail polish, which I figured my brothers would hide as soon as I left. I was mad at my brothers, but I was more mad at Buttons. She ran away from me. Why didn't she want to do anything I wanted her to do? How dare she agree with my brothers? The whole point was that I was finally supposed to have someone on my side. Someone else small and girly and pretty, who didn't want to make a lot of noise and mess to have fun. Someone who would like to be better than anyone else. Instead, I had a terrible feeling that Buttons didn't like me at all. Dun, dun, dun. Chapter 11. So guys, I hope you enjoyed that chapter because it was so good. Also guys, I hope you like my yelling in the book in my voice lines, and I hope you did like it. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed these two chapters. And yeah, see you next time on chapter 11. Peace out. See you next time. See you next time, guys. Bye. Peace out. See you later.